So when you talk about it, and right now that is the way. So that's what I'm doing. We're talking about a hypothetical, potential possibility. I have no idea what that would look like.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the next 6 months when we talk about AI, what that will look like at all, let alone the next 2-3 years.
Coming to you weekly from the OnPay recording studio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm Blake Oliver.
And I'm David Leary.
And we are joined today by Mfon Akpan, Dr. Mfon Akpan. He is an assistant professor of accounting at Methodist University who is passionate about incorporating new technologies such as AI to provide students with up-to-date and relevant learning experiences that will help them thrive in our rapidly transforming world. I love that. Dr. Akpan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Blake and David, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you.
Yeah, and it was perfect timing. So, Blake, do you remember in episode 374, a couple of weeks back, I brought the article to the show about the Australian professor that said, AI can't teach accounting. And then I went on to ChatGPT and I basically created an accounting 101 course in like 10 minutes, right? An entire course with debits and credits and the tables and profit loss and balance sheets and T accounts and the whole 9 yards. Well, literally the day after we recorded that episode, Dr. Apkin's assistant, somebody reached out to us unrelated to our episode to speak. Hey, it's an accounting professor that wants to speak about AI. I was like, come on, let's do an interview. And that's where we're at today.
That's so great. Yeah, I would love to learn about, how you're using AI in education, Dr. Akpan, and, what you think it's going to do. Because I feel like just in the year that I've had access to it, I feel like it's going to transform everything. It's revolutionary.
It has, and that's some great points. It has transformed a lot. And I think the one thing to think about, number one, is how it works. So thinking about that article and going through it, the article was right. If you just feed in questions, you'll get that output. However, is that the right way to use let's say ChatGPT in that case, or ChatGPT-4? Well, there's something called prompting, and that's the secret sauce to these language models. And there's something called zero-shot prompting, few-shot prompting, and five-shot prompting. And this increases the effectiveness or the output of the language model. So in that research article, from what I read in the experiment, they took a question, put it in to get an answer. That's called zero shot. So in terms of effectiveness, that's at the lowest tier. So if you look at many of these comparison, so when they compare, let's say Claude and GPT-4 or Gemini, you'll see the tests are done with few shot or 5-shot. That means they've given 3 examples of the question that they'd like it to answer before they give it the actual question. That increases the effectiveness of the output. So simply put, it's not a search engine.
Yeah.
So you're not just going to type things into it like a search engine. You've got to work on your prompting. You've got to give it examples. So you have to work with it to get the best output. So if you think about it, maybe it's right 85% of the time. So how do you get it better? They call that fine tuning. To get that other 15% better, how do you fine tune it? You give it examples. You give it more detail. So you work on your prompting, have a conversation with it. So you work with it to get better output.
Well, and maybe this approach of asking questions, like the type of questions you would see on the CPA exam, isn't even the right approach for evaluating whether these tools are good at teaching accounting. Because when I use ChatGPT to learn something, I don't just take a problem. Like, problems in real life never present themselves like they do on a test, right? That's not how I'm asking it for help. I will simply describe, I'm having this struggle. I don't know how to do this. Can you guide me into how to do it? And a great example was, I was booking a payroll journal entry, and it's been a long time since I had to do that. And I had the payroll register from our payroll provider, and I dropped that PDF in to ChatGPT. And I said, hey, based on this payroll register, can you guide me as to how to enter this transaction into the accounting system? And it did a fantastic job, right? And I didn't get everything perfect, but it guided me to getting to the correct answer.
That's good. And I think that's the key point, because it helped you. You were more efficient. It got you to it a lot faster. And I think many times we focus on the negative. So just like I said, it may get 85% right, but then 15% wrong with the hallucinations. And we may tend to focus on that 15%. But what about that 85%? How is that moving us forward? And then the other, I think, key is finding ways to add ChatGPT or other language models into your workflows. So figuring out how you can use it, even if it's 10%, if it makes you 10% better, 15% better, that's a great thing. So I think focusing on that point, I use the analogy, you can do math in your head, right? But if you had a pen and paper, it makes things a lot easier, right? Do some math with a pen and paper, right? And then, okay, you've got a calculator. That makes things even better, right? So you do the math. So look at it as a tool and something that can push you forward.
Love that analogy. That's great. So how are you using AI to do your job as a professor? And then also as a follow-up question to that, how are you utilizing it to teach students or help students learn AI?
Yeah,
accounting students. Let's make sure.
Well, I'm going to give a plug to Wiley, but before I do that, I incorporate AI assignments. For example, in my auditing course, I give the student, they have to perform a risk assessment, so I have them to use Claude to perform their risk assessment on a particular company. So, and I have like a table. And what's funny is that I show them, I say, well, hey, if you do this, if you choose the AI option, all you got to do is put in this table, tell it to fill out the table. And then I click enter, and it's done within seconds. And then I see everybody's eyes light up, and I say, who's going to use Claude? And everybody's raising their hands because it looks so fast and so quick. And the last auditing class I taught, I had one student said, nope, I'm not doing it. I want to go in there. I want to look at everything on my own and do my own research. But the feedback later on was the students were saying, okay, we did it. It helped us. It made things really fast, but we still had to go back and check everything. So again, similar feedback you had, Blake. It was a great tool. It made us more efficient, but we still had to go back and check everything to make sure everything was okay. So to answer that, giving them exposure to it, my shameless plug, Wiley has asked me to create the AI activities for their the Kimmel financial accounting book. So I'm working on that right now, putting together a group 3 activities per chapter that instructors can use for each chapter in the book. So it's about 22 chapters in there. The first part of the book is principles or financial. The second half is managerial. So it's a combined book. So they've got me doing that. The challenge with that, and to add to that, is this thing is changing. And I was talking to one of my colleagues at the university about this project that I'm working on, because I was worried. So Wiley asked me to do this, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, Bard was here. Now Bard is Gemini. You got ChatGPT 4, you got 3.5 Turbo, Copilot. What am I going to do?
Right. We just got Claude 3. That just came out. Now everything that I've said over the last 6 months is obsolete.
Yeah.
How do you keep it up to date?
Yeah, so that was the conversation we were having, because she was saying, "Oh, it'll be easy, you'll be fine." I'm like, "Well, no, this was bothering me because I'm like, this is changing." So I had to go back and I took an agnostic approach. So I tried to eliminate platforms and names. I use prompts. I have to go in, I test the prompts on Gemini and I test them on uh, GPT 3.5, Claude 3, et cetera, and Copilot to see what the output is. But I think at this point, it's being very agnostic, meaning these things change so quickly and we don't really know how these updates are going to work out, and how soon they're going to come around.
Mm. So
There's go ahead, Blake.
Well, I was going to say, David, do you want to stick on education or do you want to go more broad?
I had another thing on education. We've seen some surveys, and there's arguments that with AI tools are going to cause people to not to use critical thinking. They're going to cause people to not learn skills. What are your feelings on the actual education of people that are using AI to either learn or do their jobs?
Well, just to clarify, what do you mean by skills? So when you say skills, what
well, like all the grunt work you may have done as a entry-level accountant at a big firm, maybe is now done by AI. Are you going to learn those skills? Well, it's not my argument. I think these are arguments that are out there.
To counter that, things change. So I'm not going to date myself, but when I was in college, one of my professors was saying that he used an actual journal. Then there's Excel. Yeah. So are you going to things change, technology systems improve, and the reality is you've got to move forward with the systems and the technology. The reason I was asking about the skills, I think what's going to come more at the forefront is being able to communicate. So being able to communicate, talk. So some of the soft skills are going to come to the forefront, as well as having to adapt to change, which I think is already here. However, it's moving at a faster pace. What do I mean by that? So before I came here, I teach a class in the business analytics department. We use Microsoft Power BI. They update Power BI just about monthly, right? So it's some of the updates could be big, some of them can be minor, but it's changing, right? So you think about the course of a year. Same thing with this. I think the only thing is there's that uncertainty. We don't know how much, GPT-5 may come out or 4.5. We don't know how big of an update that will be or how much that will change things moving forward. So I think that skill of approaching things from a lifelong learning standpoint, being comfortable with change, I think that is going to be very important moving forward. Definitely the fundamentals are going to be there as technology, because it has flaws. But the other thing to think about, this is the worst it will be. So today is the worst it's going to be. Tomorrow is going to get better, so they're going to keep improving this thing. So that's going to happen. But I think definitely fundamentals will always be important. But other skills will come up to the forefront.
One of the main criticisms of traditional education, colleges, universities, and especially accounting education is that, and I hear this from firm owners all the time, accounting students, accounting grads are not showing up at firms with the skills that they need to do their jobs effectively. Mm-hmm. They have some theoretical knowledge, but they have very little or no practical experience. They can't do a tax return. They can't create financial statements. What do you say to that, Dr. Akpan?
I say everybody I know at KPMG's invested billions. Everyone I know, KPMG, Deloitte, PwC, they're all in on AI, and they're looking for ways to get people to become more efficient and move things forward faster. So I get it. There may be issues there, a skills gap, but at the same time, what I'm hearing from my friends who are in these firms, they're all in on AI, and having AI a part of workflows and looking for ways to increase efficiencies, to get things done way faster, particularly in audit.
But I'm not even talking about AI. This was a problem before
Oh,
AI,
oh,
right?
oh,
So,
okay,
like
okay.
my
Sorry,
question,
okay.
I'm saying just in general, uh, is traditional education preparing accounting graduates to do the work that firms need them to do? It doesn't seem like it is.
And when you said that, what was you said they're not able to prepare tax returns, or what was
Yeah,
the
basically
criticism there?
that these grads come into firms, right? And they're useless. They don't know how to do anything. They have to be
Mhm,
trained on how to do everything. Uh, some of them don't even know their debits and credits properly.
mhm,
And
mhm,
I was a career changer, so I went through my accounting education sort of later in life, and
mhm.
I was shocked, honestly, at how little practical application there was in my classes. It was so much theory, very little application. And so I totally understand why firm owners complain that students come out of these degrees and they don't know how to do anything in a firm, right? Accounting is a very practical profession.
Right.
And it used to be that you learned accounting on the job, and we didn't go to school for 5 years to become
Mhm,
CPAs.
mhm,
It was
mhm.
taught more like a trade, but that's not the case anymore. And I wonder if that's part of the problem. What do you think of that?
That's a tough question. And you're asking an accounting educator.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm challenging you, Dr. Akpan, because accounting education costs a lot of money, right? We're asking these students to
yeah.
go hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt in some cases for an education that seems to be declining in value. So I'm challenging you to justify what you do. Is that
Well, I
fair?
would
Am
put
I being unfair?
no. It's a fair question, but I would say number one, across the board, it depends on the program, depends on the field, depends on the size of the firm. What are they getting into? So that I can push back on that as a blanket statement. Is there have I heard what you've stated about their issues about students coming in? Yes. Have I talked to individuals at big firms, at the big four, and have they talked to students and said, well, what do you need to know? I've had friends of mine at big firms say, well, look, we'll train you. Come with the basic skills. We'll train you on what you need to know and what you need to do. So I've heard different
Mm.
sides to it. Definitely, I've heard your side to the equation. Um,
Can I give you an
but
example?
I would say it's more of a nuanced question. But
But
go ahead, give me an
Well, yeah,
example.
so here's the example. Like in Minnesota, there's a movement right now in the state
Okay.
to
Yeah.
eliminate the requirement for 150 hours of education, 5 years, right? And restore this
Mm,
option for 4. And if you look at the communications from the state society there, and Jen Leary, who leads the largest accounting firm in the state, and other folks who were quoted in these press releases and the news coverage, they all say that there is no noticeable difference between an accounting graduate with 5 years of education and one with 4 years of education, right? So that fifth year of education is adding, in their mind, zero value. So my question is like, why does it take 5 years to educate CPAs, and why shouldn't it take even less? Why shouldn't it take 3 years? Why shouldn't it take 2 years? Right? Why does it take so long to teach people the theory of accounting, and we're not even teaching them any practical skills when we do it?
I think you're kind of saying two things. So one, the assumption is that everyone who goes to school for accounting is going to take the CPA route. And that's not always the case. So I get the 150-hour rule, but that's tied to the CPA exam. So you're kind of, if you're asking the question about this, the 150-hour rule to take the CPA exam, that's one question. Are you talking about someone getting into the accounting profession? Not everybody. It may be, depending on which university, it may be 30% of the students, 20%, 10% that actually even sit for the CPA exam.
Is that a good
Then you
thing?
may have a small. Well, yeah. Why not? It is a good thing. Not everyone has to be a CPA.
Right.
And you also have to think about accounting is a broad field. So that's why
Huh.
I kind of push back on that, because you have not just public accounting. So not everybody's going to go into public accounting. And then you got to think about also, you have right now, you have a lot of people who are in public accounting are leaving public accounting to go into adjacent fields like business analytics.
Mhm.
So they're moving into different fields. And there's another issue on the public accounting side where they talk about the hours and the pay. So that's another issue there. So I think that question kind of ties
I
into
could give a
different
different
areas.
example. Like
Okay.
I hired
Okay.
accounting graduates from the University of Arizona to be our interns. Right? They never saw QuickBooks. They were never exposed to anything in the real world accounting, like accounting. They just never saw it. They couldn't do a reconcile. Like they could do it, but they completely missed the concept of why you even reconcile. And I just
Okay.
expected more, right? Like from
Yes.
an
That's
accounting
what I'm
major.
talking about.
And one went and back and got her master's. And like she literally got all the way into a master's program and missed the whole concept of what reconciling is. Right.
Mhm.
And then that's, I think, that's just one example of somebody I heard, but that's the vibe you kind of hear from lots of firm owners is like people just don't have the practical skills to start working on day one, you know?
So my next question would be, what's the percentage of those students at that university that sit for the CPA? What's the percentage that go into public accounting? What are some of the jobs that they go into once they leave the university?
I mean, shouldn't every accounting grad understand how to do a bank reconciliation?
I agree. But you're saying different things. You said the CPA, so you're saying going one route, but accounting's a very broad field.
Yeah.
So for example, I've got most of my students. I've got one student who works, a former student who's at Deloitte working in tax. I've got another student who works for Army Audit. Another student, PwC, they work in audit. So I have other students that have no interest, and to tell you, the ones who are in public, okay, they're moving towards the CPA, but beyond that, many of them, we talk about it. Some of them, they don't have an interest to move forward for the CPA.
Okay. Well, let's just talk about the CPA then, right? We got this 5th year requirement. Do you think we should keep this 5th year requirement, or do you think we should have 4 years plus 2 years of experience?
I think the 5th year if you're asking me, I think the 5th year requirement is good. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think the issue is with the pay. So, and what I mean by that, from my conversations with partners and managers in public firms, the big issue is keeping people.
Right.
So they may get people there, but people leave because they can go into, again, adjacent fields, or they can move into different areas that pay more money.
Right.
So I think that is the challenge, because if you think about it, okay, great. You get into public accounting, you may have a clear path on where you're going to go as far as where you're moving up, but the pay and the hours of work, you're working a lot more. You might not get paid as much if you're in another field. So it's not as attractive.
Surveys of accountants and CPAs show in multiple states that 80% support changing the 150-hour rule and going back to 120. And I think a similar percentage say that it doesn't add any value. They don't see a 5-year accounting grad as having noticeably more skills than a 4-year accounting grad. Like, these are surveys by Arizona, Minnesota, other states have done them. I can't remember off the top of my head. Right. So the firm owners, right, the customers who are basically, hiring your grads are saying that they don't see the value.
Yeah, but you just said that the students aren't learning enough, so you want them to have less school instead of more school. So you're saying to drop the hours, and this is giving them more hours.
I'm wondering. What I'm wondering is if the time they're spending in school is not very well spent.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
In 5 years, we can't teach somebody how to, be able to do a bank reconciliation or even understand the concept of why it's happening. Like, why is there such a disconnect between, the theory of accounting that is taught in schools and the reality on the ground.
Yeah, I don't think there's that big of a disconnect. I'd like to see the data on that across the board, but I don't think there's that big of a disconnect.
So to swing this back to some extent back to AI, we're all in agreement that AI could improve your efforts 25%, 30%, 40% reduction in efforts for the work you want to do, possibly, right? We just
Mhm.
saw JP Morgan Chase has some tool that's helping companies. They're replacing 90% manual efforts, 90%, right? So, so instead of a 5-year accounting degree, or just degrees in general, like colleges, as professors use AI more, students are using AI more, do you think education could be accelerated to where now somebody could get the equivalent of a 5 years, 150 hours in 2.5 because the content's up to date faster, they're learning faster because of AI tools? Do you foresee like a future where maybe if everything else is becoming more efficient, education does as well?
I could see education becoming more efficient. How that would carry over, I couldn't say at this
Yeah.
point, but I could see it becoming more efficient.
Like, it just shocks me that we are still measuring education in terms of semester hours, which translate roughly to the hours that a student is in a classroom. And this to me seems very similar to how firms measure employees based on timesheets and hours that they bill, right? We are tracking
Uh-huh.
inputs and not outputs. So, why are we still saying that if you spend 5 years learning accounting or 5 years getting an accounting degree, you're 20% more knowledgeable? Like, just because you spent more time on something doesn't mean that you
Mhm.
learned more.
That's true, but what's your alternative?
Well, measure people based on their skills. I feel like the problem with traditional education is, we measure people based on the time they sit in a classroom, and we don't measure them on what they actually know when they come out of it.
When you say when they come out of it, so I mean, you're getting
Yeah.
grades, you're getting grades, you're taking exams all across. You got to progress and move forward. But you're talking about as far as once you graduate, you get your degree. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, we have this CPA exam, right? Which
Okay.
theoretically measures your knowledge. And if you spent your time well in college, then you should be able to pass this exam. And yet we have an entire industry dedicated to preparing people to pass this exam. You would think that if you graduate from school, that you wouldn't need to go then take Becker's, $3,000 or $4,000 course to be able to pass the CPA exam. And if you
Well,
are getting that knowledge from Becker, right, then maybe you don't need maybe we could just have Becker
Exactly.
teach people how to be accountants and they could do it in 6 months, right? Why does it take so long?
so your alternative is that instead of getting a degree, we go to Becker and we take a course and then sit for
Well,
the is that
I'm saying that maybe that instead of like getting hours on a transcript in certain categories, and that determines whether or not you get a degree, that maybe we could actually with AI test people for skills. And so it doesn't matter. Like
okay?
Yeah.
if you know your debits and credits, why not test out of it? Why do you have to sit in a classroom for a whole semester if you can master that skill or you can master that set of knowledge faster? Like, this was always the problem for me as a
Oh,
student,
okay.
right? Dr. Akpan is, I was
Uh-huh.
at the top of my class in most
Okay.
of my education.
Sure.
And the way classes are taught is, you got this bell curve of abilities in a classroom and you have to teach to the middle,
Mhm.
right? So you are,
Really?
right? Don't you?
Go ahead. Yeah, go
Like,
ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. So basically the top 10% and the bottom 10% are really not well served by this traditional model of classroom education, because the people who can learn faster are held back and the people who are struggling to keep up get left behind in many cases, right? So it's very inefficient in that respect. It works for maybe the middle 80%, but not the outer 20. AI could change all
Yeah,
that.
it could, but we're not there yet. But I see what you're saying. So you're looking at something where you have something that's on your own pace.
Yeah, why not?
So in other words, if you can move at a faster pace, you move ahead at a faster pace. If
Yeah.
someone's at a slower pace, so it adapts to
Right.
your level. Yeah,
Right.
okay,
Wouldn't
that
the ideal
sounds good.
situation be like, let's say I'm your student, Dr. Akpan, right? Instead of putting me into a
Mhm.
classroom with a bunch of other people who may not be at my ability, what if I could just learn individually one on one from you? I could probably go faster than in 5 years, right? Maybe I could learn in 5 years what you teach to many students in 2 years. So why are we using
You
time,
could.
right? Why are we measuring people in terms of time?
You could, but then there's some other things that you're missing out on because you're working by yourself. You're missing out on the teamwork. You're missing out on the building other soft skills around that you would need later on. So yeah, there's pros and cons, but I get what you're saying. You're moving at your own pace, so that
Well,
makes sense.
There's no
but there's
course in soft skills that I have ever heard of in an accounting education program.
It's not part of the requirement. Yeah, it's a soft skill.
No, but many times they're embedded. So you have team projects, you give presentations.
Oh God, team projects. That was always my least favorite thing because I ended up pulling dead weight. Right?
Team projects.
Well, you learned something there, right? Right?
Yeah, I learned. I learned that I don't like team projects. That's what I learned in school.
Yeah, but it exposes you to that. So you learn something. You learn you don't like team projects. That's not your thing. But at least you are able to. In other words, you're not siloed and you're not by yourself. Yeah. Even if so, let's say for example, to your point. So if I'm teaching face to face. Let's say I'm teaching an online course asynchronous, right? So I'm not in the course. I'm still looking for ways to foster collaboration between the students. You'll have things like discussion boards where everyone has to communicate with each other. So there is some sort of component of, or you may have a team project that you're working on online. You're not meeting in person, but you still have that aspect there.
I'm wondering if AI could completely disrupt traditional education, because when these chatbots get good enough and they're trained on specific bodies of knowledge, every student can have an individual tutor. And that's the best way to learn, right? The original model of education was like Socrates and Plato in either individual instruction or small groups. And it wasn't a classroom with 100 people and one professor. And we could go back to that with AI.
But he could, because Dr. Akpan could load up an AI engine, and it could be the Akpan AI and his students, because you only have so much time of office hours, right? You can't meet with every student for 2 hours a day, but you could get your knowledge squished into an AI bot, and you could now have your students really interact with you deeply. Well, deeply, and today it'll be better tomorrow, right? Every day it's going to be a little better, but that's kind of a way for you to scale, professors to scale their skill sets.
I wouldn't like that. And I'll tell you why. And I was just having a conversation with a student about this earlier today. We were preparing, he was interviewing me. So students are preparing the marketing material for our business school. So they've got students working on this. They're interviewing professors, and they were asking me about some of the things that I liked about our accounting department. And one of the things that I really liked about our accounting department is that we have a smaller class size. So it's max and principals about 30 students. In upper level, it's about half that. So about 10 to 15 students. Mm-hmm. So I know all of my students. Why is that important to the students? Well, if they're going to get a job, they're going to need a letter of recommendation. They're going to go to grad school. They're going to need some sort of reference or a letter of recommendation. So I know them. So I've established a relationship with them. And that's one of the things that I take joy in doing, is writing letter of recommendation. Or if students are interested in public accounting, introducing to someone who I know, and I actually know the student. So it's not that, oh, okay, they've interacted with a chat bot. I've never talked to this person. I get to know them. Same thing, former student. I can connect that former student that I know with a current student. And I'm able to talk about the strengths and weaknesses. And hey, are they a good team player? So one of the questions, are they a good team player? Do they prefer to work from home? Do they want to come into the office? How have you seen them in this situation? How do they handle problems, right? So I'm able to answer those questions, then help them outside of the classroom. So I get the efficiencies. There's pros and cons to that. I get it. But then there's also things outside of that that I believe will still be around, still have value. So I get that. But the data is yet to be seen.
It's interesting that none of what you mentioned has anything to do with the actual knowledge that is transmitted to the students. Right?
Okay.
Like
right.
What I have to, intermediate accounting, for instance, right? I need to learn amortization and depreciation.
Right.
Okay. Why does it make sense for me to go into a classroom with 30 other students, having read a chapter in a textbook, listen to you lecture, right? And then we ask questions, go home, study, take a test. Like, why is that the best way to learn? Perhaps there is a better way, and AI will create that alternative.
It's very I never said that. I never said it was the best. What I did say was there's pros and cons. So when you talk about and right now that is the way. So that's what I'm doing. We're talking about a hypothetical potential possibility. I have no idea what that would look like.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the next 6 months when we talk about AI, what that will look like at all, let alone the next 2-3 years. But what we're doing right now and what I'm doing, that is what we're doing. And again, I agree. I didn't say it was the best, but there's pros and cons to it. So again, on your side, I'd like to see the data. What is the data to say one thing is better than the other? And we don't know. It's hypothetical. And based on your theory, I get where you're talking about the efficiencies. So I can see that. Definitely the efficiencies, the values with it, but also on the flip side, there's got to be some negatives to it. So there's positive and negatives to it.
I think one of the positives will be that it will lower the cost of education, which has become completely unreasonable.
That will that would be amazing. That would be amazing.
This goes to your point about the salaries, right? You say we need higher salaries. Well, how do we control that? One thing we can control is the cost of education, right? We can reduce the requirements to sit for the CPA exam by getting rid of the 150-hour rule, which lowers the cost of education, right? That improves the return on investment of an accounting degree for a future CPA. It's the same impact, right? You raise the salaries, you lower the cost to become a CPA. It both affect the ROI calculation. But let's talk about the salaries issue. How do we improve salaries in the accounting profession, Dr. Akpan?
Well, I think it's pretty easy. Allocate more money to the to the associates, and I think with all of the technology, because not just AI. So you've got we've got Power BI, we've got Tableau, we've got all types of software that is made. If you're specifically talking public accounting, or you were mentioning QuickBooks, et cetera, that's made things more efficient. So pass some of that over to the employees. I think that would be,
But we got QuickBooks. We got QuickBooks 20, 30 years ago, right? That hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Like the partners at big firms make, I think I just saw a survey, over $800,000 a year.
Yes.
At the biggest firms. The associates who they are hiring are making starting salaries of $60,000, $70,000 a year.
Right.
So they could share the wealth if they wanted to, but they don't. And I don't blame them for not doing it, right? But like, why should they do it if they don't have to?
Wait. That's a different question. You asked me what should be done. That was my answer.
Your answer is share the wealth, right?
Yeah.
Pay them more, right? But how do you can't make private businesses?
I didn't say that. I'm not saying I can make them, but you asked me what. Well, yeah. Well, that's it. So you said I want to talk
about how do we actually change the situation, right? Like, that's not going to work. Just saying pay them more doesn't work. The AICPA has actually been saying that, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah. The business model, though, right? I mean, in a way, Dr. Akpan's setting these students up for failure by letting them use Claude to do an audit that's going to get them to take a 5, 10, 20-hour job down to 45 minutes, and now their billable timesheet's going to be 45, and they're going to look in the traditional firms, they're like, that's a bad employee. They only have 1 hour of billable time. Like, in a way, you're kind of setting them up to be bad employees in the current business model, right, of accounting firms, which is
the faster you get, the fewer hours you bill and the less money you make for the firm.
Well, that's one way to look at it. Or the faster you work, the quicker you finish one project and move on to another.
Right, but the firm gets paid based on the hours that you put in your timesheet.
Yeah.
Or at least that's how they view it, right?
Well.
So what about this idea, Dr. Akpan? I have an idea for how we could actually improve starting salaries, or how we can improve work-life balance. Right? Basically.
Well, see, you're throwing in these extra things. So you said salaries, and then you said work-life balance.
So everything's connected here, right? And so we have when we talk about the job in accounting of associates, there's at least two components. One is how much they are paid, and the other is how many hours they work.
Okay.
And you can change both of those, right? So if you increase the salary and you keep the hours the same, now you're making more per hour. If you reduce the hours, now you're making, and you keep the salary the same, now you're making more per hour. And that's what really matters in the end, isn't it? That to me anyway, that's what matters.
So if you have a choice, so let's say, for example, you have a choice, you can go and work at a public accounting firm, or you can work as a business analyst and make more money initially getting out of school, and you don't have to eventually take the CPA exam. So to your argument, that 150 hours and go back to school,
right?
Potentially. So let's say the firm is going to pay for it, but you still got to go to school. You still got to pass this exam, or you can get out of school and go into I'll just say an adjacent field. You can go into another field outside of accounting and make more money
and work less hours
off the rip, potentially less hours, but
potentially
more money
for sure.
So,
for sure.
Well, okay,
come on.
We'll give it
Let's
that.
Be honest here.
We'll give it that. We'll give it that. We'll give it that. So you have that choice.
Yeah.
So talking to students, because I'm around students, that other option for many of them is more attractive.
Yeah. So
does that make so?
Yeah. So how do we make accounting?
So going back to what I was saying, money. So what they're looking at, okay, I'll give you the hours. I'll give you that one. But initially they're looking, okay, if I go this way, I may not have to pay for it, but I've got to study some more. I got to take an exam. I'm working more hours. I'm making less money. I've got to go through these different hurdles, right? These hurdles. Yeah. Or I just go over here and I'm making more money. I don't have to go to any more school. I don't have to take a test, and I can keep moving. And usually what I'll see, I'll stay here for maybe 12 months, maybe 18 months, and then get another position and make more money, and then get another position, another 12 to 18 months and make more money and have experience. So again, that's where the money side of things comes in. I give you the work-life balance point. I see that, but normally the conversations I'm hearing is around the money.
All right, I will give that one to you. So then that brings me back to my question, which is how do we actually increase salaries other than wishful thinking?
Well, I told you, you said, how do we increase salaries? Firms pay more. So they have to have a focus on paying more. And that's it. How are you going to compete?
If I'm a firm owner, I'm just going to use AI.
Wait. So when I talk to partners, and their big issue is the turnover. So they get people who come in, they get experience, and they leave. They leave. They go. What I was told, they go to tech firms. They go to they leave public accounting. To make more money. So again, that's what I'm hearing from the students, and that's what I'm hearing there.
So what I'm hearing is leaders at accounting firms don't understand simple economics 101. So they got their accounting degrees. They took jobs at accounting firms. They're senior partners at accounting firms. They don't understand supply and demand. The reason these people are leaving, it could be work-life balance, but if it's just the financial part, yes, if you don't pay more, you're not going to have bodies. It's simple.
I think work-life balance plays a big part in it, but the money. So what I'm hearing is the money. They come in, the turnover is they leaving because money.
So the big firms are not hurting for people. They have plenty of people
Right.
who want to go work at Deloitte, KPMG, PwC, EY. No problem, right? It's the
What,
smaller firms that are hurting for talent.
but from what I'm understanding with the big firms is keeping the people there for the long term.
Well,
So yeah,
but
you're right.
that's not their
They
business
have,
model. Their business model is bring people in for 2 to 3 years, work them to the bone, and then they leave. And then they get new graduates that buy in to the value of the Big Four on their resume who do the same thing.
But ideally, they like you to be there, associate, senior, manager, and to move up the ranks. They like you to stay.
Their pyramid, it's up or out, right? The pyramid doesn't not everyone can stay at the Big Four. Most people leave.
Not everyone can stay, but for what I'm hearing is that people are leaving and they would like people to stay. So they have turnover. They like people to stay. And the reason they're leaving is money.
Right. But so the model is
I understand the model.
Right.
I understand that, but I'm telling you what I'm hearing.
Okay.
So you were asking me, where am I getting this about they need to pay more? I'm getting it from what I'm hearing. Managers, Big Four, students, same money. That's where I'm getting. Little bit about the work life. That's a little bit is there about that, but the primary thing is money. And when you look at the attractiveness of those roles, again, so you were talking about the 150 hours, you're talking about the CPA exam, and you've got a choice: money right now, or maybe I get more money later, but I've got to do all of these other things. The immediate gratification is usually there.
So here's one thing we could do that I think would actually increase salaries.
Tell me.
Force the firms to increase salaries.
Yes.
Stop exempting accounting grads, associates from overtime wage protections. So basically, require firms to pay time and a half for hours over 40 in a week. It would force them to hire more graduates. It would raise salaries.
Okay.
Right? Because people would be getting paid extra money for the 60 hours they're working in the week or the 70 hours.
But what about the work-life balance part?
Well, it would improve that too, because firms would have a financial incentive to keep hours at a reasonable level. I don't understand why, as a profession, we think it's okay for people to work 60, 70, 80 hours in a week. It's unhealthy. Even if you're sitting at a desk, it's not healthy to do this. And we simply accept it as the way things are in this profession. It seems wrong to me, as somebody, and I say that as somebody who used to buy into this work hard mentality. And I have since, thanks to COVID, like many people, realized there's a whole world outside of work. And that my life is much better when I balance my work, my family, my friends, my exercise, all of that. But we don't do that in accounting. We have 6 months out of the year in which we do nothing but work.
Yeah, that's interesting. So talking to managers, partners, some of the feedback is that the associates, they feel they want to go into the office because they feel trapped sitting on Teams all day, or being at home. They want the interaction. So that's interesting to hear that. I think.
Oh God, yeah. Being trapped on a Zoom call or Teams for 12 hours a day would be my nightmare.
Yeah. So yeah, I hear these arguments that individuals actually want to go in the office. They want to be around other people. But okay, I see that. I get it.
But what about the 40 hours in a week, right? Why is it okay that in accounting we tolerate this?
I don't think it's okay. I don't think it's okay. I don't think it's okay.
So maybe, our leadership, the AICPA, should advocate for eliminating these exemptions for accounting professionals. Like, why shouldn't accounting professionals, have a 40-hour work week? Just like we created the 40-hour work week for factory workers, but we don't do it for accountants.
So okay, so that's good for. So what's the con? So what's the good and what's the bad with that?
Well, I think the good would be that if firms want people to work more than 40 hours, then those people would get paid for it. Right now,
Right.
Right now,
That's
if I'm a
good.
partner, let's say I'm a totally selfish partner at a big four firm.
Well, that's not
I'm assuming
fair to
that.
say selfish. That's not fair to say
Well,
selfish.
no. I mean, look, I'm a business person. I'm operating my practice to maximize my profit. Okay. Which
Okay.
is fair. I think we all agree that the purpose of a business is to make money, is it not? Right? We are
Yes.
accountants here, right? So if my goal is to maximize the profit of my firm, then I have every incentive to hire graduates and work them as many hours as I can get them to work. So that creates a very negative perception of accounting, and you just have to go on social media to see it, right? People are unhappy because they're
Blake,
being worked.
do you like accounting, Blake?
Dr. Akpan, this is the crazy thing. I came into accounting as a career changer because it would give me flexibility. It would allow me to make a lot of money and do what I want. I could work as many hours as I wanted. And that's because I work in this area where I can be self-employed. I can work when I want.
Right.
And so it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that we have this whole 90% of the profession that doesn't get that, because it's totally possible. Accounting is the most flexible career in the world, potentially, but we make it one of the most difficult. And I don't have any idea why we do this. I mean, actually, I do. It's the business model, right, of the big firms. I love accounting.
But the key word is the big firms. So you can always maneuver into another area.
Right, but that's where are you sending your graduates?
But that's the trouble. I feel like the system's built to fill those big firms.
Right. The universities funnel their graduates into this system.
I think the standard is set at the CPA level. So that's considered the highest standard. So that's what we work towards. Again, I was asking you, the question is, what is the percentage of students who are going in, accounting major, that are actually going towards public accounting? It's not 100%.
But
so if you think about it, it could be around 20%, could be around 10%, and it also depends on the institution.
So my understanding is that like 2/3 of accounting graduates end up going into audit at big firms. That is where the bulk of our graduates go, because that's where the jobs are for them when they come out of school. And they work there for a couple of years, 2-3 years, and then they leave. That's always been the situation. And that's how the system is set up, right? These large firms make donations to universities. They fund, in a lot of cases, chairs of universities, and they donate and they recruit, right? And so the whole accounting education system is set up to funnel graduates into big firms. On the whole,
I would say the system, what we teach to, and that is the standard. The public accounting CPA is the standard that we go to.
Yeah.
But not all of the graduates, not all of the students. I would have to say maybe 20-30%. At my institution, is probably maybe 15% will actually sit for the CPA exam.
Really? That few?
Let alone work for it. Well, yeah, because they're working in other fields.
Yeah.
So I have some students that work in public accounting. I have many students who are they do work in audit, Army audit, so they work in other areas. Another student is looking to work in government. So there's different areas that you can work in. So I mean, I get it, but.
Well, and maybe that's the solution, right? Is instead of sending students into big firms, is send them elsewhere.
Didn't say sending. So when you think about curriculum, the standard is set towards when you leave, you'll be able to move towards the CPA exam. So that's the standard. So across the board.
But you're saying your curriculum is set for the CPA, but only 15% of your students are pursuing that.
Yeah,
so isn't that a problem? Like the curriculum doesn't seem to be lining up with what the students are doing.
No.
Maybe that's the reason. Maybe that's the reason firm owners are complaining that the students aren't ready. Is what is being taught is not what we actually need.
Well, your thesis is that every accountant needs to be a CPA, but that's not the case.
Oh, no, I don't agree. I don't agree with that. I don't think every accountant needs to be a CPA, but I am a CPA, and so I'm invested in protecting the value of it. I think the problem is that students don't see the value in the CPA anymore. They don't see that traditional path as being appealing. And so we're declining. That's why the number of CPAs is plummeting.
So why is it not appealing, Blake?
You said it yourself. It's low salaries. I said high.
So you're agreeing with me.
Well, I said it's low salaries, but I also said it's the long hours, and I also said it's the excessive education to get there.
Okay.
Right. So you've got three things working against you. You've got high cost of education, you've got poor work-life balance, and you've got low salaries relative to other things you could be doing. That's the reason. It's not just one thing. It's a confluence of things that are causing people to say, why would I want to become a CPA working in public accounting?
Okay. I agree with that.
So we're coming up on a full hour here. So I'm going to wrap this up with the final question.
I have really enjoyed this conversation.
It just went on. It's been great.
This is good.
It's been great. So Dr. Akpan, if there's other accounting professionals that might be listening that are not using AI or GPT type tools in their current educational endeavors, what advice would you give them? Like, where should they start? Obviously, get your book that's coming out, or your course. But how else should they do this?
Well, I do have a book. I do have a book coming out with Dr. Scott Dell, ChatGPT and accounting. So that's coming out. The key thing is to start using it. I would say this to start using it, start understanding it. One thing, learn how to prompt. So learn what prompting is. Know that it's not a search engine. The other thing is, and I get this a lot. So I do webinars for a lot of CPAs, CPE, and they don't want to use. They don't want to have anything to do with it. So the one thing I say is, well, okay, fine. You don't want to have anything to do with it, but you should know about it, because if you got employees, they're probably using it. Your competitors are probably using it. Your clients are probably using it. So you need to understand what's out there and what's in the market and how it's working. So you should at least have some sort of working understanding of it. I think that is the key. The other thing is to understand that the lifelong learning piece, there's a book by Stephen Johnson, Where Good Ideas Come From. And in there, he talks about this rule, the 10-10 rule. So he talks about prior, it took 10 years to develop technology and then 10 years to adopt it. So let's say the color TV took about 10 years to develop and then 10 years for it to be widely adopted. That world does not exist anymore. And just like we were mentioning at the beginning of the conversation, when we were talking about the project I'm working on with Wiley, Bard, was it 8 months ago? There was Bard, now it's Gemini, right? So then we had ChatGPT 3.5, the Turbo. So it's constantly changing. So really, you have to be able to adapt. And I'd phrase becoming technology agnostic. So in other words, focusing on things that you can learn that carry over to all of the areas, such as prompting, right? Or understanding what are the key features? How does this thing work? And what if I learn how to use Gemini, what can I do on Gemini that I can do on ChatGPT? So understanding the overview of the technology.
Dr. Akpan, it's been great talking to you. Thank you for going over with me. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this subject, and you are too. So it was really a privilege and an honor, and hope to have you back on the program for more debates.
Yes, thank you so much, Blake and Dave. It's been great. And I appreciate the points that you brought up, particularly about the profession and what they call the pipeline issue. So I think that's very good. Appreciate it.